What's up,
All right,
Tom?
all right.
This is perfect timing, brother. We got let's see what I gotta do here. Make sure I'm not getting back feed.
Mute your I got to mute your speakers on that side.
Let's go.
There we go.
I'm good.
Yep.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is a room where we discuss Clubhouse publishing. Blah 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 blah. Okay, you talk, Tom. I'll mute my stuff.
Good morning, everybody. This is the room where we talk Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media, aka the Dom and Tom Show, as it's sometimes called by some of our favorite people who come by the room. We host this room every week, inviting folks in to ask questions, drop tips, essentially creating a space where we can all gain from each other's experiences. So that's the goal of what we do here every week. And we're live streaming as usual. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Twitch. We're on LinkedIn. We're all over the internet. We're also obviously on Clubhouse. And if I sound a little bit rough, a little congested, I'm getting over a little bit of a head cold, so working on it. I'm working on it. I sound better than I did yesterday. Yesterday, if you saw my training video yesterday, Dom, I sounded pretty terrible. This is actually how I sound when I'm hungover. This is my which is kind of actually like, without a little bit of, I've got a little nasal congestion. Without that, it's actually like a good like voiceover voice, I feel like, right? Like a good like movie trailer voiceover voice. So it's like, in a world, one man, right? Like that kind of thing. But but yeah, in reality, it's a head cold. This is not what my voice naturally sounds like.
I went in. I did some recording recently, Tom, and I went into this studio, and it was the worst. My voice is always a bit strange. My parents should have probably fixed my deviated septum or whatever I have going on here about 30 years ago. But I went in and did some voiceover work, and it was the worst that I've sounded. I mean, I was like you saying, coming off a cold and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, they put me at like the beginning of this, we'll call it a trailer or whatever they're doing. And so all these people are calling me. They're like, Dominick, is that your voice we hear? I'm like, yeah. And I don't know, of all days to use it, that you were going to use it that day, but I guess it sounded weird enough that they said it was all right. Who knows? Let's meet our buddy Jason. Let's see what Jason's got. Businessman, philosopher, father, and content creator on YouTube. Okay, let's ask him about YouTube. Jason, how often you putting videos up on YouTube?
At least 3 times a week. I have my own regular stream called Rise and Grind with 72 the Architect, usually Mondays and Wednesdays. And then Saturdays, I do a series called Man to Man Voices and Stories. So I'm just getting ready to start launching Man to Man formally.
How do you produce content for 3 days a week? What's the length of the shows you're putting out?
Usually it's half hour, 30 minutes. I try to make it 30 minutes. Sometimes I have people come in who want to add their 2 cents, thoughts, because I leave at the end of my talk room for if people want to come in and comment. And I'm also testing the waters with just record only, no live stream commentary. It's just, let me get my thought in, get out. And I write my shows last week, like the week before. I think it out. If I need to add research, then I do, but I use Restream a lot. So.
Okay, I'm fascinated with content producers that can, because one, the algorithm is saying like they want more content, so you're doing a good job with that. But so many of us are like, oh, we didn't get the editing in, or I didn't get an interview in, or I didn't have time to do this. So you, with this formula of 3 days a week, it's impressive.
It's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to create my own radio show or TV show for myself and my kids to watch, really. It started with that. And friends of mine started watching and said, hey, you should make this a thing. And I said, all right. And so first I was just audio only. Now I just really started making videos in this last year. So this is a whole brand new experience. There's a lot of things I don't know about YouTube, and really keeping people in more than 10 minutes. And that's why I try to make shorter content as best I can. And that's my 2 cents.
So I got a question, Jason. Is it as you're, because this is kind of speaking to what Dom was asking about, right? In terms of like, how do you do it? How do you create that volume, right? And for me, I think the secret lies in developing a format that going in is repeatable, right? That going in, okay, I'm planning to do like 3 episodes a week. And I know that I can get 3 interviews lined up enough in advance to execute those or release 3 episodes a week, right? Or whatever the case may be, I can write enough in advance that I'll have 3 episodes to put out every week, that you build it sustainable from a sustainability perspective to begin with, rather than I think a lot of people jump in and they're like, I want to do 3 episodes, but they don't do the pre-production work. And so they end up getting in and like they do well for a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is actually more than I can handle. And I didn't realize it. And now I can't keep up. Is that true to what you found, or is that how you went about sort of creating this show? Go ahead.
It is not easy. I'll tell you that. Pre-production, you've got to first write out your script. What's your idea? Start out with a premise question. And I only usually do interviews once a week. So when I do my Monday and Wednesday gig, which today I'm late, I'm not really into it today, but it's okay. But I'll record something to release later in the day. But one thing I will say is like, you got to develop your idea. You can't just always shoot from the hip. Some people do that. I don't always like to do that. I want to make sure, am I making points or am I telling a story? Where there are times where I make points with adding a little bit of story. Can people listen to it, grow into it, to be curious and hear it all the way through? So I think that if you're not developing curiosity throughout your work, and for reason why people want to invest in listening to you to begin with, I think that's the biggest opportunity. So hopefully that helps out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. And I think, when it comes down to it, it all depends on, kind of what expectations you've set for your audience and how you live up to those expectations, I think. Right. And, so if you're creating, if you're doing 3 days a week, and you're consistent with the style of content you put out on those days, so people know what to expect, right? You set expectations with that consistency, and then you meet those expectations. I think whatever that content is, we'll find an audience, and we'll find people, people who enjoy it will follow it and stick with it. Personally, I post almost 7 days a week. I post a video. It's not always 100% 7 days a week. In fact, I skipped a couple of days earlier this week because I was sick, and I didn't actually do any training, and didn't get out and create any videos. So I didn't post any. But it's one of those things like I do. But I every time I put up one of those videos, in the title, in the description of the video, it says vlog, right? So people know immediately, just from like reading the first couple of words, it's marathon training vlog day, blah, 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 right? They know right away, this is a vlog. So they have an idea of what to expect. They're not expecting a highly polished, overly produced, really, really shiny piece of cinematography. They're expecting somebody pointing a camera at themselves and talking, and that's exactly what they're getting. So I think it's all about setting expectations, and then meeting those expectations. It sounds like you've established a good way to do that for yourself. So well done.
Thank you. Appreciate
it. Hey, good stuff all around. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, the architect, Jason. I'm going to push follow here. Jason, you got yourself a new follower. Stop by anytime. Hang out, my friend. Okay, we talk Clubhouse, publishing, podcasts, and social media here. Tom, I was thinking about changing the name. Our friend Julie said maybe we get shadow banned by having the name Clubhouse. When the app started, or like we've been doing this for about a year, and we used to put that in the name because a lot of people had no idea what was going on, and we were trying to explain some of what goes on Clubhouse, and we still do that with our streaming because we stream this, and sometimes we'll talk about Clubhouse being social audio. What is social audio? Oh, it's a place where you can be at work and also be in a conversation. It's a place where you can be active or inactive. So that's a lot of what we talk about here. So Joyce, we were talking about creating content and how often can you do it. Jason says he's doing it 3 days a week. So we were digging in on that. I had an idea about editing and posting and deleting stuff. Like all of a sudden you go in, you mess something up and you delete it or you edit it. Well, did you ruin the whole post because of the algorithms and stuff like that? Should you go in and edit and delete it? Okay. The other thing that I really wanted to dig into today here was content resharing, the importance of it. I watch Seinfeld episodes. I watch The Office episodes. I've watched the same one 1,000 times, but people are sometimes hesitant to reshare their content. They're like, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do that." Well, why can Coke run the same ad 1,000 times? The Office can reshare something. Seinfeld can reshare it, but we think we can't. So, Joyce, have at it. Those are some of the subjects. Jump in wherever you want.
Good morning. So we record one show a week, which seems like plenty between the booking and prepping and making sure this is about my guests, this stories I'm highlighting. So I want to make sure that I'm doing as good a job as possible. So I really focus on one show a week and then supporting that in the social media when we release it and then making sure they feel like I've done a good job. I think content is interesting and editing is interesting. So I had an interview last week with a woman working in the cannabis industry, but was going through foster care, trying to adopt. And during the interview, we had talked about her consumption, which she was concerned. It's not live, so it's a recorded show. And she had called me later to ask that I actually take that out because she's having this adoption. And again, she's in a legal state. She works in the industry, but because she's caught up in the system with children and services, and she can't be public about her consumption, which I thought was crazy. So and upsetting, really. So I had to edit that. So that was like a little bit of editing. I don't know if that comes back to the editing question. And then, repurposing. So we just started doing little video formats. We are only audio. So we started doing some videos on YouTube and on Reels and blogs. I guess kind of mixing it up. I never really thought about the repurposing as reruns. And I actually don't listen or watch TV shows more than once usually. So that's not my thing, but I know lots of people do. And that is where I am. I'm done. I'm complete.
Okay, Joyce, good stuff. And I wonder, just on the stage, Tom, on the stage, anybody down below too, do you watch reruns? Just clap if you do or don't. Okay, we got it's a mixed population. Go on, Tom.
I do, but it's not even. I don't even think it's about watching reruns, right? I think what we're missing, the sort of key component that we're missing with resharing posts, is that while it's not going to be new to everyone, it's going to be new to someone, right? The way, and it's similar with broadcast too, right? Like the way it works is, while some people might be seeing it for the second time, third time, whatever, right? There is a good chance that a large portion of the people you reach, especially on social media, right, are not going to be seeing it for the second time. They're going to be seeing it for the first time. So it feels repetitive to you, right, when you're resharing something because you know it so well, because it's yours. It feels repetitive, and so you're hesitant to do it. But you're almost guaranteed to be reaching new audience every time you share a post, right? So don't forget. And like maybe you had a community of 500 the first time you posted it, and now your community is 2,000, right? On Instagram, let's say, right? So out of that community and out of that reach that's now expanded, right? How many new people are you going to reach with that piece of content that have never seen it before? So don't forget that while it may not be new to you and it may not be new to everyone, it'll definitely be new to someone. And so you shouldn't hesitate to reshare content. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
I'm loving this conversation, and I'm guilty of not doing enough. Like, for as much as we all post, let's say my dear friend Brian, who's here, and we're all sharing stuff. Brian's got a lot of great books. Brian's got a nonprofit. Brian's got a radio show. How many people don't know that he wrote a book about fatherhood 5 years ago? You know, fatherhood's a subject. The messages of these books still stand. And I thought it was funny when we were talking about resharing. So on this TV show, Bikes and Hikes, I'm on, it airs on these Armstrong cable. Anybody has Armstrong cable, find it on there. But on the days it airs, they do blocks, like 8-hour blocks of television. So then I think it will air 3 times a day on one channel. So to your point, the people at 3 a.m. that are watching me when they're coming home from the bar are probably not the same people at noon that are watching the show. So same with social media. When you put something out this day or that time, or whose algorithm didn't let you see their post that day because somebody else didn't like it, and you repost it, reshare it because you believe it had value. Brian's books about fatherhood or about overcoming disability or whatever, about being a great dad, they make an impact. So, hey, Swifty, since I teed you up, man, that was beautiful. Where do you weigh in on all this stuff?
Thanks, Dom. You're all too kind. Oh, I agree with Tom 100%. We don't know, especially with between the algorithms and not knowing how often people really get on and off. I think we could post way more often than we do, and still not hit some of the people twice or 3 times. So I think you definitely have to repurpose. I mean, if I wrote something or made a video a year or 2 ago that's still relevant, why not reuse it? In 2 years, how many people have come and gone. So I think repurposing, whether it be on social media or for an article or a chapter in a book you're writing, I believe that it's all good to repurpose. I think it's smart to repurpose, and I think that we almost owe it to the people we're trying to reach to repurpose. I'm complete.
Wow, I like that thought. It's almost your duty to do it. Imagine just even looking around this room, like now we know each other. We hang out, like Julie and Brian. Julie's going to be on Brian's show today, and we met Joyce and know about her cannabis business. Imagine these relationships we have here, how strong they are. What don't I know? And like I always talk about how much Johnny's content I watch, love Johnny's stuff. I wonder what I don't know from 5 years ago. I bet I would love the stuff that, and maybe he's sprinkling it in as well, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff there once you go to like somebody's YouTube page, if I go to Jason's YouTube page, if I start digging in on it, I bet I could go back through video after video and probably enjoy the content. So Marcella, what's happening with you today? To love oneself, I'm reading her little bio here. It's great to start with a quote that pulls you in. To love oneself is the beginning of lifelong romance. Marcella. So where do you stand on all this? What do you got going on today, Marcella?
Dominick, you can never get my name right. It's Marcella. And it's better than the last quote I had. It used to say, I'm an asshole through and through, but I'm the most loyal one you'll ever meet. Anyway, I agree with Brian about repurposing videos. I have a 10-year-old daughter who owns a business, and that was one of the most important pieces of information that she was given, or the most important piece of advice she was given for her videos, because she creates her own content. Repurpose as much as you can and post as often as possible. I agree on the reruns. I love the rerun idea just because I grew up on reruns in the 70s and 80s. And I guess I'd have to agree with that since Mac, Maccabee Griffin is my co-host on Beyond the Pen podcast, and our podcast was just uploaded to Traverse TV. I think it's Traverse. So they're watching older episodes of us right now. So I'm gonna rest my mic there.
Watch this. Marcella, excellent job. Thank you. Yeah, and I nailed it. Never has just changed. I got it at least once. So thank you very much. Here's something I want to ask you guys. So let's say you have podcasts, you have YouTube shows. How do you share it again, but knowing that as soon as you put that link in any form of social media, so let's say I put the link in Facebook that takes you to YouTube. I put the link in, I want to share this podcast episode. As soon as I share that link on LinkedIn, I'm getting penalized in the algorithm. And this is something I can go down all day long. So how many different ways do you just, some days I just accept it. I know I'm going to get penalized on this, so I do it. So, but then other times I'll share a picture of it. Johnny, you're clapping, and I know this is your world. Go on.
So, yeah, never, ever, 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 ever share a link to a YouTube video in Facebook if you actually want people to watch that video. Because Facebook hates that and they bury it. They throttle it way, way, way down. So, if it's your show, if it's your project, post it natively into whatever social media platform that you are using to promote it. If it's Facebook, post that video natively in Facebook and then share it from that original post natively in Facebook everywhere you can on Facebook. Facebook loves that. So that's how you do that. And you do the same thing with all of the other platforms. If you want someone to watch it, you've got to post it natively in that platform. Now, not every video, not every show, not every audio clip works the same way in each platform. So that's where that repurposing comes in, where you need to repurpose it specifically for that individual platform. Play their game by their rules, and you'll be successful. I'm Johnny. I'm done. Ta-da!
So go on, Tom.
I just wanted to jump in and just co-sign on what Johnny's saying here. Just remember that the goal of every social media platform is to get you to spend as much time as possible on their platform, right? So they hate links that take you off the platform, right? And they are deprioritized, they get buried, people won't see them. So if you post something, make sure, like Johnny's saying, that it's native to the platform, that it keeps people on the platform. So if you want to post a video on Facebook, upload the video to Facebook. You want to post a video on Instagram, upload the video to Instagram. You want to post a video on TikTok, upload the video to TikTok. Actually, now that I say TikTok, I don't think there's a way to post just a link anyway. But regardless, like, make sure that you are playing that part of the game correctly, right? Trying to figure out all the intricacies of the algorithms and how they work, I think, is a bit of a fool's errand. We've talked about that before ad nauseum, but make sure that you are playing that part of the game and understanding that they want you to stay on the platform. And so in order to stay on the platform, don't share outside links. Don't share your video to YouTube, like a link of your video on YouTube on Facebook, because nobody's going to see it.
And that goes for branded videos too. If you post a video that you made on TikTok, but you downloaded it, but it's got that TikTok logo on it, and you upload it to Facebook, Facebook actually sees that and they'll bury it then. So don't do that either.
True story. The man is correct.
So the question becomes, is being buried, is it always bad? What's going to happen here is some people are going to be like, well, then I don't have that piece of content to put out. I don't have the video at all because I can't share it both ways, or I don't have the raw files of the video. So would you, is it ever okay to say, well, maybe in this case, like, should I, if I have a half-hour video, should I really put the full half hour into Facebook or something, Johnny?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Listen, Facebook is rewarding long form content because long form content keeps people there longer, and they are really promoting long form video content heavily. So 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours, post it on Facebook and then share it. And look, it doesn't have to be your post. If you were on somebody else's show, they should be doing the same thing, and you share it from their page or from their group all over Facebook, and the same thing happens. It doesn't have to be from your source. Just don't post from outside sources if you want the maximum amount of people to see it. Now, there are exceptions to that, obviously, because everyone listening to me is saying, well, I've watched something that was posted from YouTube to Facebook. Yes, but that's the exception. That is not the rule.
And great points,
Right.
Johnny. And even, sorry, go on, Tom.
I was just going to say, it doesn't mean that no one is going to see it. It just means that fewer people will see it. Right. That's the thing. It doesn't mean that it'll get buried or shadow banned or whatever. It just means that fewer people will see it. It won't be prioritized by the algorithm because it's removing people from the platform. And every single algorithm of every single social media app has one goal in common, and that goal is to keep you on the platform as long as possible because that's how they make money. Remember, attention and our time on the platform is the commodity, right? That's what they're selling to their advertisers, right? And so that's what their algorithms are designed to do. They're designed to keep us on the platform.
And to Johnny's point, and Tom, you post these links taking people off their platform. Your future posts get punished as well because they're the same. They added into the algorithm and they know, hey, this person is somebody taking people off of our app. So very interesting conversation. I am glad you are all here on this lovely Wednesday. Okay, we got Monica, Become Your Own Boss podcast. Okay, Marcella in the house. Julie's on the phone right now. Tom is here. Joyce, our cannabis expert. Johnny always dropping tips. Dr. Tachi's around. Okay, excellent. Dimple, Heather, our algorithm master. Monica, weigh in on all this. Drop a tip, ask a question. You know the subjects we're talking about. Have at it.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I definitely do my best to repurpose content. I feel like at this point I have so much content. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by it. I'm like, what do I want to reshare and repost? But one of the things that I definitely do is when I want to take a break from the podcast, I go back to an older episode and reissue that because I know that I have new listeners now than I did in the very beginning. So the content is still relevant. And then I wanted to add into the algorithm thing with posting links. And I don't know how true this is, but I recently heard on a podcast, of course, we know that LinkedIn now allows you to put links on your videos and on your photos and things like that. And supposedly, the president of LinkedIn said that you will not be penalized for doing it. But supposedly, that is what he has said. So I don't know, but I have been doing that on LinkedIn. And I mean, I don't have a lot of followers there anyway, but I do notice it just seems to be the same right now. So I just wanted to add those things, and I am complete. Thanks.
Thank you, Monica. So very interesting conversation here, and I'm loving everybody's thoughts on it. And I really, so I would come back on this is know this about those times. Sometimes you're going to get punished. Let's say I share an outside link to whatever. Let's say it's an outside link to a GoFundMe. Let's say it's an outside link to a podcast or a book to Julie's new book on Amazon or something like that. Well, okay, I know that I'm usually getting 10% if I did the math. Okay, my views are usually at 10%. Knowing, okay, this is only going to be at 5 or 2 or 3%, like Johnny said, it is going to get buried. But is it worth the risk at time when you could go the other way and put straight original content out? So, or is there a work around? Julie, dig in on all this. Julie's off the phone. Everybody, shh.
Well,
Julie.
guess who called me? Brian P. Swift.
Oh, did he? What? All right, he was here.
He
He's
knew I was on here.
yeah, he's worried about it. He wants to make sure you show up at his studio. So, are you going? You're going in studio today with Brian P. Swift?
I'm not going in the studio because I found out it's like, so I have one child home sick today, but it's an hour away. So I asked him, can we do it remotely? But we did meet yesterday, and we had a great conversation. I just said, I hope I don't embarrass you, Brian P. Swift,
Well, I'm sure
on your
you.
famous radio show.
Well, being that you're going to be on the radio show today, you have a podcast. What tip would you give for somebody that's going on a radio show or a podcast so they don't blow it?
This is honestly my first radio show I've ever been on. And I'm sorry, can you hear my son? My other son's playing the drums right now, so I hope it's not too loud.
You should. You should encourage your son to play louder, because rather than just barely banging. I think he should go for it. You go all in.
Well, it was my mistake to put the drum room right next to my office. I wasn't thinking properly, but that's okay. I'll miss it when it's gone next year when he goes to college. So, this is my first radio show I've ever been on, but I imagine it's a lot like a podcast. I think, you definitely know who you're talking to, what the top topic is, and don't be a greedy guest, meaning understand that they're spending their time, they're spending their perhaps money, they're spending their marketing hours to share you with the world. And I believe it's your duty as the guest to do the same. Share the episode, talk about it. It's mutually beneficial. So, and don't be nervous. It's fun. You wouldn't be invited if you didn't have a message or platform to be on. And I did hear one little tip about repurposing, because I repurpose all the time. Something I've learned, because I court Google, if you will. I date Google. Everything I do is to try to get Google to recognize me. I know that sounds really desperate when I'm saying it, actually, but if you're repurposing what's that?
I was going to say, are you on Google's front lawn with the boombox held up over your head?
I am. In your eyes, light the heat, your eyes. Yeah. I'm like, say anything, Google. Just say anything to me. Yeah, pretty much. But if you are repurposing videos, which I do, I actually repurposed, I rebranded. I had an interview with Evan Carmichael a couple of weeks ago, and I recognized it could be on both of the podcasts because we talked a lot about his journey in writing his book. So the thing is, when you're courting Google, you don't want the same verbiage. You don't want the same notes. You don't want the same wording because Google doesn't like it. It will ignore you. So make sure you vary the description, show descriptions and that sort of thing. I like to be lazy and just cut and paste, but I've learned that, you just put a little more effort into just writing a quick, bio or whatever, something different than what's on your other video or other podcast or other post. So you differentiate yourself in Google's eyes and algorithms, but absolutely repurpose all the time because it's too much for us. It's really too much for us to be out there running businesses and like creating all this content all the time, original content, when you have thousands and thousands of other, just other pieces of content that you can pull up and use it, repurpose it, just make it a little bit different, a tweak here or there, so Google actually listens to it. So I don't know. Love your thoughts. I pretend I'm an expert, but I'm always learning. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jolie. And this thought of people copy and pasting the content right from one to another, yeah, that for me, that's a a hard no. And even some of your followers are on the same place. They're watching you both places, your communities both places. You can't tell me you can't change it up a little bit, even if it's the same piece, that you can't change what you're saying up a little bit and add value. In case that would be for Tom. If I'm going to post it 2 places and there's a risk that the same people might see it, can I add value by making a little tweak on that? So I think you can. All right, we have resident expert weighing in, Dr. Tachi. The pressure's on. So where are you at? Give us some tips, Dr. Tachi. And I'm sorry, I do this all the time. I'm going to get better at it. But for my podcast host on here, my radio host, my podcast host, since a lot of us want to be guests or we have been guests or something, I would love to hear from our podcast host after and Dr. Tachi can start us off, something you hate that guests do. And so that, hey, we walk out of this room today, we say, I heard a host say, don't do that. So you're up first, Dr. Tachi. Go on.
Yay. Good morning, everyone. Really quickly before I get to that, I did want to go back to the point of video, and you were talking about watermarks and things on video. That's why I'm an advocate of being platform agnostic. I know that places like TikTok, etc., have a lot of great tools, but then you get that watermark, and yeah, there are some ways to take that off. Some apps you can use, but why deal with it? Just create it platform agnostic and then import it into the various apps, and you won't have that problem. Okay, so now something that I hate that guests do. And I'm not trying to be funny. I have not had a guest that there's something I hate that they do, because the process begins before you even bring them on. If you are vetting them and you listen to what they do, and you prepared them well, you shouldn't theoretically have any issue. So I can't think of anything that I've had an issue with that guests do on mine. So I'm probably not the best example.
Wow, that was a really PC way to putting it, Dr. Tachi. Well, how about something, and I'm going to make you answer this question. How about something you've seen guests do, not necessarily on your show, that just was like nails across the chalkboard?
Where I think I've seen it for both hosts and guests. And I've said this with hosts before, that let them talk instead of you doing all the talking. But when guests ramble without a clear direction. But I think, again, that's on the host. If you don't ask a clear question and you don't guide them, they may not have a clear answer. I'm probably the worst person for this question. But yeah, I think I've seen guests continue on, but that's also on the host for not guiding them. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Tachi. It is, and also the host becomes more skilled and can cut in. Tom, we're going to go Tom, then Johnny. Go on.
Yeah, I got a quick thought on this. So I think this is something that both hosts and guests make the mistake of doing. And it's coming into a conversation. And I always use the term conversation interchangeably with interview, because I think good interviews are conversations, right? And that's an important thing to note and remember. And that's why I exchange those two words all the time. But when either a host or a guest comes into a conversation with a rigid agenda, it is a mistake every single time. It always feels like they're trying to cram a round peg through a square hole. It feels like it doesn't fit. It doesn't feel normal, natural. It doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels forced and uncomfortable for the listeners, right? And for one or both parties. And so I think that's a crucial mistake that, especially early on, people will make either as a guest or as a host. And that is to have that rigid agenda. So be flexible, be malleable, be adaptable, right? Be ready to engage in conversation, and don't go in with like prepared remarks or a script or things you have to get out of your mouth, because odds are it's not going to evolve, right? Or the conversation is not going to happen exactly the way you've planned it out in your head. So be ready to adjust and be malleable and adaptable to the conversation. Let it go where it goes. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Can I add really quickly to Tom? 100%. And I hate to keep putting this on the host, but for me, this is why I don't give guests questions ahead of time. I may give you areas that we're going to talk about, but I've been a guest on some shows, and people are like, oh well, I'll send you the questions. I'm like, no need, I'm good, because I understand that giving the questions ahead of time can lead to that type of thing where it's manufactured, where it sounds like there's an agenda. So give guests, to me, what I usually do is give them areas we're going to talk about and some general questions we may approach, but I don't give them a play by play of what I'm going to ask.
Thank you, Dr. Tachi. Always appreciate your ads. Johnny, you wanted to say something. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. So it absolutely irritates the fire out of me when I book a guest and they think that their purpose is to come on and talk about themselves and their new project, their new book, their new course, their new whatever. And that's not what our show is about. Our show is about, celebrating the fun of the Saturdays of our youth while surviving adulthood today. And a guest has to be able to play and fit into that format to bring value to our audience. I'm going to give them 2 minutes at the end of the show to promote whatever they want to promote. But if they think they're just coming on specifically to promote, I don't need them. So that's my 2 cents. I'm Johnny. I'm done. Ta-da.
Can I add to that?
Come on, you got that green dot, man. Have at it.
I just don't want to talk over anyone.
Nah, you're
I
good.
have slightly different beliefs a little bit about that. I do believe in giving my guests question, but the first thing before we even go on the air, I'm going to have a discussion with you and get a feel for you so that I can develop my questions for the show. And then if there's any objections or an area that they don't like, if they're an expert, I'm the interviewer. People come to hear me first. Right. But secondly, and importantly, is I am interviewing for their specialty. I am looking at their experience, and I talk to them like, look, if you're going to promote your book, or whatever, I'm cool with that. You just kind of give the people the careful guidance. But I mean, you as a person, you just got to develop questions in a style that you're having a conversation and not just trying to sell, because that at the end of the day, you got to think about, why is the listener even listening to you to begin with? They're listening for either to be informed, entertained, or some of the reasons I'm not even thinking about. But at the end of the day, I just really think about, develop a comfortable style that they don't even think they're on air. That's the key of capturing somebody, is if you can get them to be comfortable with you and vice versa. You meet them where they're at and they meet you where you're at, and you're just giving stuff that's not, look, I'm not no Walter Cronkite or Inside Edition. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy, like, I'm interested in you. I brought you here because I either align or I'm interested in curiosity of what you do. So I think it's very important that when you're presenting your interview and that story, you're growing curiosity in the audience so that they want to know more. And it's reciprocal. Like, that person you're interviewing, hey, you know what? I was on Rise and Grind, or I was speaking with Tom today, whatever. And I had a good time. Their good time, your good time promotes good vibes, and people want to be a part of that. If they want to cure shock value, I'm sure you can turn on the TV and there's plenty of it. But I just think that I have a slightly different belief, but I do believe that that's what you should do.
Great, thank you.
That
I
was
just want to jump in here real quick and say, I've done 100+ podcast and radio. I've done Fox News, ESPN Radio, CBS, and they're sit-in live interviews, in studio, radio, podcast, whatever, both. I'm sure I've blown a lot. I've slouched on the couch before. I've found out where certain cameras were, where I'm like, I'm going to look at that camera because I just think it looks better, because you're sitting back behind watching the people before you go, and you can figure out some of that stuff like that. But I will say, I wanted to point out that some of them, even CBS, gave me a little, it wasn't necessarily questions, but it was, hey, the segment's going to be about this long. Here's the things you need to be ready to talk about. This, and this. And then it was, and so I don't know. So I've seen it. I've seen it both ways. But I've had some bad ones where they gave me 10 questions and they didn't veer from the question. I thought I led into like the perfect follow-up and they were on next question. I'm like, what? Really? How depressing. So I think there's good, bad, and ugly in all phases. So Monica, you wanted to add in Tom. So let's go Tom, then Monica.
So, Tom, I just for the CBS thing you're talking about, where they give you a couple of points and here are the things you should be ready to say. That's because that's a formatted story, right? And basically, they've already written the story, and they want you to say the parts that they've written for you, right? So, like, that's why they're doing that. It's kind of a different animal than what I think than what like Johnny or Jason were talking about with podcasting. Right, because that's a bit of more of a free form format, right? At least most people's podcasts, right? So they're also on a very tight time frame, right? So they know they have 2.5 minutes for that segment, and like whatever happens at the end of 2.5 minutes, they're throwing a commercial. Period. So they want you as the guest to be prepared to say things on cue. Right. So when they queue you up, they want you to be focused and clear and concise because they've got 2.5 minutes to get the whole thing done. Period. End of story. Right. Because they're on a clock. So that's part of that for sure. I think the other thing I wanted to say was I don't think Johnny and Jason are actually disagreeing much. I think they're saying similar things in different ways. And one of the things that I just wanted to highlight is that when Johnny talked about the goal of the guest is to provide value to the audience, that's the goal of the host. That's the whole reason the audience is there, is because they are deriving value from the content you're creating, right? So you're creating the content and the audience is there to gain from that content, whether that's entertainment value, whether that's informational, whether it's educational, whatever the case may be, they're there to gain from it. They're there to garner value from the content you're creating, right? And so at the end of the day, however you structure that conversation, and I 100% agree, Jason, I could talk for hours about how important it is and ways to make people comfortable leading into an interview. In fact, a trick I used to do back in my TV days when I'd be setting up an interview with somebody was I always made it a point to get them to laugh with me and often laugh at me before the interview. I would make self-deprecating jokes. I would get them to laugh and relax before we did the interview. And that was crucial to getting people comfortable in front of camera, especially when those were people who were not accustomed to being in front of camera. But we could talk about that for hours. But I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is, regardless of the style or the format or the kind of content you're creating, the whole reason the audience is there is to gain value from it. And that's why you're bringing on guests. That's why you're doing the interviews, is to provide them value. And so I think any promotion has to be done well and seamlessly, and done in a way that the audience is ready to receive it, right? And I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they go on to shows, and like, I think this is maybe what Johnny was hinting at, is they go on to shows and they just want to talk about themselves and they just want to talk about their project, right? And at the end of the day, the first thing you have to do is get the audience to give a shit about the person who's talking. Pardon my French, just keeping it real. Get the audience to give a shit about the person who's talking, to give a shit about the guest, right? They have to care first. And then they'll be receptive to learning about your projects and how they can learn more from you and gain more value from you. But yeah, you have to warm them up, right? And I think that's incredibly important. And a lot of people miss that. They jump right to the sale, and they miss. They miss the dance. They miss the warm up. They miss, they skip the whole date and they jump right to the end. They try to go for the kiss right away and it doesn't work. Right. So excuse me, still getting over the cold, like I mentioned earlier, but yeah. So anyway, I think you guys actually agree on a lot there. But I just wanted to highlight that. And Monica, I know you wanted to chime in. So go ahead, Monica, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. I was just going to add that for my guests, I do send them questions But I primarily do that because I want them to wrap their head around what we're there to discuss. And I'm trying to help early stage business owners learn more about business and avoid the pitfalls of business. So they're learning from other entrepreneurs who have been in it for a while. And so I send them questions, but then I I will ask, I will start off with typically one of those questions, and then I let the conversation go from there, because I do want it to be natural. I want it to be fun. A lot of times people touch on sensitive issues, and I may dive more into that if they're comfortable with it. So I think that's what makes an interview dynamic and make it more entertaining for the people who are listening, and they can learn at the same time. So that's it for me. I'm complete.
Cool. Thanks,
Go ahead,
Monica.
Donna.
Johnny, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So you know who's a master of this is the late night talk show hosts, in particular, Jimmy Fallon. They are masterful at doing this, at creating entertainment segments, at creating engaging couch interviews, and what we call in the industry doing couch. And if you want to be a guest on a podcast, you need to know how to do good couch. But then he says, okay, uh, this has been a fun conversation, yada, 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 but you got a new movie coming out, don't you? You got a new record. You got a new book. Tell us all about it. And, he makes you care about the person. He creates entertaining segments. And then if you like what you're seeing and hearing, you're more likely to pick up that book, that record, go see that movie, watch that TV show, whatever it is. And so check out Jimmy Fallon and look at what he's doing for how to do this masterfully.
I want to highlight one that I just thought of as Johnny was talking about Jimmy Fallon, and that is the YouTube series Hot Ones. So I'm sure most of you have seen this series at some point. If you hadn't, go watch it. It's a hoot. It's hilarious. But what's interesting about that is they're very explicit, and Sean, I forget his last name, the host, is very explicit about going to the promotion, and the audience is totally 100% okay with it because they've already delivered a whole bunch of entertainment and information, right? And so they're saying, like, explicitly at the end of the episode, they finish eating all the hot wings, they've gone through the suffering and the tears and pouring milk all over their faces and all kinds of crazy stuff that's happened during the course of the interview. And they've spilled their guts and laid their souls bare. And then Sean says, and now we're going to roll out the red carpet for you. So this camera, this camera, this camera, the floor is yours. What do you got going on that you want to share with the world? Or I forget exactly how he says it, right? But it's something along those lines, right? And it's very explicit, but the audience is 100% okay with it because you've already given them so much value. Right? You've already given them all the entertainment value. And so it's a very clear transition. Like, okay, we gave you this. Now this person gets to do this. Right? It's an equal exchange. And the audience goes, yeah, that's fair. That was hilarious. I got to see them do crazy stuff. And it was all very entertaining and interesting. So sure, I'll hear what they have to say. That's fair. Right. So just another sort of masterful way to do it a little bit more explicitly than, like, say, Jimmy Fallon does it when he says, this has been great, but aren't you here to talk about your movie? Right. Like, where he'll pivot back to it. Just another way to do it. So just something to bear in mind, that the audience will be okay with it. But again, only if you've delivered a ton of value first. Right. Just remember that.
I'm loving this conversation. And as a publisher, you would think I would say to my authors, like, talk about your book. My advice is be interesting. The host will ask. And I almost early on, as I set authors up with interviews and stuff like that, I'll put them with a podcast host that is going to give them a little more TLC, knowing that they may not be ready yet for another kind of show or this or that, because first they need to get their story tight. They need to get their topics tight. And I thought about somebody interesting that Bear Grylls has that show where they go hiking in the woods. You know, they're like propelling off of helicopters and things like that. And then he'll ask them the questions later on. But you've already seen this interesting stuff. They're on message, and then all of a sudden they talk about whatever. When we do our bikes and hikes, sometimes we'll have guests on, and we'll go walk in the woods or look at leaves. And our thing is like, we're going to talk about their book, we're going to feature it or whatever, but can we get them to look for Bigfoot in the woods with us first? Can we get them to go in the tunnel at night with us? And then once they do that, hey, sure, let's talk about other stuff. It's important. Billy, man, where do you weigh in on all this stuff? That was a odd transition. Let me try this again. Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. I'm going to go to Billy, who is an expert podcaster, expert Amazon creator, always valuable when he stops in a room and is willing to give his tips. You just start writing down and think, damn, why didn't I think of that? So that is the man, Billy. That's a better transition. So, Billy, now the floor is yours.
What's up, Dominic? Good to
How
see
you
you guys,
doing, man?
Tom. And I'm doing good. Speaking of Amazon, I'm just unboxing some stuff, checking some stuff in, so enjoying that part of the business. But no, I love it, man. I think all this information is being shared is spot on, and I guess my biggest thing that I feel like has made us successful in the podcasting industry is knowing who we're talking to and knowing the content that we want to provide to them, and keeping it consistent. And that's with us as far as host, and then with our guest as far as guest, making sure that our customer, our listener, knows what to expect. So it's 80% like, yeah, they know what's going to go on, or maybe even 90% of like repetition, and then there's that 10% of like, oh, didn't see that coming. So I think that's what all these shows that we binge watch and we listen to, like, think about all the stuff you already watch by these massive corporations who have the smartest minds in the industry, in the entertainment business, and how they're creating content. It's all the same thing, right? It's all the same storylines and different characters and all this. And you watch the show, and after about 3 or 4 seasons or 3 seasons, or me, after like 2 seasons, I'm pretty catched on, or I'm caught in the wave of what's happening. And so it's that consistency, it's that expectation, it's that safe zone that your person that's listening goes, okay, I'm gonna listen to this show for 45 minutes or 30 minutes or 15 minutes. I'm gonna give something, and they want to know what to expect. You don't go into the Walmart or the restaurant and just go, hey, here's my $25 for lunch. Just put whatever you want on the plate. If they did that, you would never go back. And also, if they give you bad food, you're never going to go back. So same thing with content creation. Just make sure you create that consistency, and whatever that looks like for you, and whatever show that you want to create. Just don't always have to cater to the listener. Just know that your listener base may not be as big as you want it to if you're the person who just talks about anything and everything, and walking your dog and cleaning up its poop, and then your grandma dying and all that stuff. Like, that's cool. That's your stories. Go share them. But if you want to create a business out of it, in my opinion, the way we've been able to do it is to really focus, get in our niche, get in our groove, and become the very best, whatever podcast that we can be with the resources that we have, and showing up consistent. And so hopefully all that made sense, man. I'm hustling around trying to get some stuff ready for, I'm going to sit down and shoot about 20 videos this morning. So I love the convo, and it's very entertaining as I'm unpackaging a bunch of products here. So appreciate you, Dom.
Hey, thanks for the kind words, and thanks for the ad. As always, you make us think. I wanted to tell you guys, when I started in business, even before I started, I had an idea, and it was a broader publishing than I do right now. And I went in front of a venture capitalist, and I was like, well, we could do every book then. Every book ever we could do. And the venture capitalist said to me, they called him the Wolf, and it's funny, like Pulp Fiction. They called this guy the Wolf, and he was from the mountains of West Virginia and just would tell you exactly what he wanted. And so I'm like, well, if we did it this way, we could do every book and everybody. He said, that's the dumbest effing idea I've ever heard. And he just stopped me right there. And it was like, he said, like, to Billy's point, he said, well, then you won't be passionate about it because this is a subject you're not into. And then what happens? And then if you're not passionate about it, what about this? What about when times are tough? What about down the road? What about promoting it? And he was right. I mean, it was tough love. So the wolf set me straight. So, okay, we are going to meet our friend Raj. Raj, man, we're talking about a lot of things here. You always have a good angle on stuff. So have at it, boss.
Hey Dominic, thank you so much. I do apologize. I've come into the room a little bit late, so I don't know where the topic's at and what everyone is discussing. If you could just give me a bit of a synopsis, and I can have my 2 pence as well. Thank you.
We would love to do that. And Tom is going to give us a recap of all the things we've been talking about. So, Tom, give us a reset.
I mean, I don't know if I can give a recap of everything that we've talked about, because as is usual in this room, the conversation has meandered. But that's, again, one of the things I really love about this space is that we allow the conversation to evolve and to go where it needs to go. One of the places we've landed is talking about having guests, and actually Dom asked the question, what's something that a guest does on your show or podcast that can drive you nuts, that's frustrating? That has kind of evolved into things that guests or hosts can both do, which I'm guilty of pushing it in that direction. Guests and hosts can both do that are frustrating or annoying on either side, or nails on the chalkboard, as Dom said earlier. But yeah, we're just kind of talking about best practices, I guess, really, when you get down to it, for creating content, creating valuable content for your audience, and always ensuring that you're delivering value to your audience on a consistent basis. So, all those things, but really focused on sort of do's and don'ts or best practices for guests and for hosts, if that plays in. So I hope that helps, Raj. I know that's a wide open area, but that's the kind of field we like to play in. We like to play in big open fields.
Thanks for that, Tom. I really appreciate that. It was a pretty good synopsis, to be fair, because I didn't know where the subject was at the moment. So, sorry, guys. I'll tell you what, can you give me about 10 minutes? Sorry, I've just had a call come in. I've got to take that and I'll be back. I do really
Yeah,
apologize.
absolutely, boss. Flash, you're welcome anytime. Flash, when you get back up
Thank
here.
you. No problem.
Okay, so we always talk about that we should reset often and like talk about what we're talking about. So hey, we're practicing. We're not. I'm admittingly trying to get better at stuff. So
Well,
sometimes
which we
tough.
all should all the time, right? I think actually, I was going to say, we can always feel free to go back to like the first question you asked today, which was about the name of the room. So we can always go back to that as well. I have some thoughts on that, but I know we have to get to Safa and Holly. We haven't heard from either one of them yet, so put me on the back burner.
Okay, let's do it. We're gonna get, and I have a question about. I'm on. I use my phone and we restream here. I got this headphone. Somebody send me in a DM or something. Billy, you probably know. I want a nice headphone, like I'm not headphones. I want a nice microphone, like I see Tom using in front of me. But I want to be able to plug it into my computer or my phone. Is that possible? So if I'm using my computer, I could use that same microphone, or if I was using my phone, I could use that microphone with more than one star. Okay, so Dr.
Yeah, you'll need an adapter, but it's doable.
That's what my budget's not that big, so I got to accomplish two things at once. I can't have two microphones here. Okay, Holly, we appreciate Holly. Holly does some great editing for me at times. She's my friend. She has a podcast show. She helps people write books. What else does she? Helps raise grandkids. Holly pretty much does it all. So Holly, it is nice to have you here. What's going on today?
Hey, thanks for having me up. And I think you kind of touched on pretty much everything that I do. And I do stay busy, but I love it all. Yeah, I don't know if I'm backtracking or not, but I was going to just kind of tell something that I've found that's started working really well for me with my podcast guest. if that's okay. Am I backtracking too much?
No, you're not. We love any backtracking, but we want to know the tip. So go on.
Okay. Okay. So from the beginning of my podcast, I always met with my guests first on Zoom, face to face, 15, 20-minute conversation. But I have found over time that I've kind of honed in on that conversation to really talk about the things that I would like to come from the podcast episode, from the conversation, as well as what the guest really hopes to come from the conversation. So rather than just random conversation, to begin with, that pre meeting, I approach it with a definite topic, that type of stuff in mind. And we really talk about that so that, and I don't send out questions ahead of time, but we do talk about what we both hope to get out of the episode. So then when we go to the episode, it's just a conversation, but I know how to steer it for what I'm hoping to get. And I also know how to steer it for what they're hoping to get out of it. And then the guest also knows how to follow my lead. If I guess I'm trying, I hope I'm saying that right. But I just, the further along that I've gotten with my podcast, the more intentional I am with that pre-interview. And it has made such a huge difference in the outcome of the episode for everyone. So I just wanted to add that. This is Holly, and thanks for having me.
Holly, thank you. And as you proved, you got it sounded like we had some dinging in the background. You're probably making a pie right now.
Actually, that's my 8-month-old granddaughter playing with a pan and a spoon.
You should put some yeast and flour there, and she'd probably make a good pie.
I was trying to get far enough away to still keep an eyeball on her and y'all not hear her too loudly.
No, you did good, Holly. Thank you. And Holly brings up something. Sometimes, Tom, when we're out filming or something, I might tell a guest the question first, and sometimes the producer will stop me and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I thought we were going to talk about this," and he'll be like, "Well, we want to get their honest reaction. Don't tell them that first." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about this, and this, or you might want to, no, wait till we're doing that. Wait till we're on camera to ask that question." So I get hit with that sometimes. Tom's shaking his head, yes. So, and Tom, you were right.
I've been that producer. With a host who was prepping the guest. And then you end up with these very sort of, especially when people are not used to being on camera, right? It's a very different thing for somebody who's used to being on camera versus somebody who's not used to being on camera. Somebody who's used to being on camera can give you a response that sounds spontaneous and natural, right? Somebody who's not used to being on camera will often sound forced and rehearsed and canned and a little bit halting because they think about it too much. They get caught up in their own head and they're trying to be perfect and they end up falling very short. And so that's what you're typically trying to avoid. And that's why you often don't give people, especially if they're not used to being on camera, you don't give them questions in advance. You don't prep them too much because you want them to be themselves. And if they have too much time to think about it, they stop being themselves and they start being who they think you want them to be. And that's never the right decision for them, right? But that's where they go. So that's why they're probably doing it. That's why I used to do it. It was just to try to get people to actually be themselves rather than trying to be somebody else.
Damn it. Good job, Tom. That makes you think, why did I do that? Satva, you've heard some of the subjects, man. Glad you're back
Yeah,
today.
man.
Weigh
Glad to be
in, man.
forward.
We need you.
Awesome. Dominick, Tom, gang, Joyce, Monica, Johnny, Doctor, Billy, Holly, Raj, audience, Cynthia, Cindilu, Brandon, Joyce, or Delola, I can't see the rest of your name. Candice, Derek, Raphael, JP, Cindy, Brent, Chris, Julie, Terevia, and everyone on the replays. This is Satwa. What I do is content. I've been posting videos since, let's see, 2012. When I started my business back in 2012, I was doing a lot of stuff across the country, little pop ups before TikTok was there. If it was something catching some band out on, say, like the wharf or, somewhere in Louisiana, or if it was out in Seattle, Washington, wherever it was that the freight had brought me, I would always take time and just enjoy it and just go out there and bring my family and my friends into what I was doing. And it was spontaneous, and it still is. So I do that kind of stuff here in the dynamic that I'm in Milwaukee, and a lot of this stuff is already on my Facebook. I did some pretty extreme experiments about the art of manifestation, manifesting things in the present moment, how the mind and the body soul connection all really works. I really brought that into camera and real time, and it was spontaneous. It's me. How I hear this, like I've heard some of the shows about Jimmy Fallon and the coach being good at couch. That was a new concept to me, and the way that that is interpreted to me is just being authentic. And then there's this word raw authentic. So the raw authenticity of something is where all the magic is. It's like, okay, so being in front of this camera, knowing that someone's going to be watching this, that I'm going to be picked up on every intimation, every intonation, every inflection is going to be measured and weighed upon the contrasting audience who will be the hearers. And finding this space like of being the observer within my own body, observing my own experience, and sort of just playing with it as the point of the observer. So this comes from the throes of like meditation, being in that still space and slowing way down and just pushing every expectation off to the side and not discrediting it or saying, oh, that's this, that, or the other, not judging it, but just asking myself a lot of times, well, how does this fit for where I'm like happy and where I want to be in this playful fun thing that I do, called life. And it's really that. It's, do I like it? Well, no. I don't know if there's anything anyone can say that they like 100% of the time. There's that could go a lot of different directions, so I'll keep that right there. But then there's this aspect called love, and I think of love as a command. It's like, it is, love each other as I've loved you. It's sort of one of those scriptures, and it's like, okay, so in the Bible it says, and the greatest command is that you love each other just as I have loved you in the New Testament. And that can go a lot of different ways as well. And it's always sat well with me about love. Like, I don't have to like everything, but if I'm commanded to love everything, just as the Creator has given me this body, this experience, this life, my health, all of the gifts that I have, all the gifts that I've given to myself, if I love them, well, then I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to figure out, well, where is this really? What is the essence of this? What is the quintessence of this person, this situation, this dynamic? And this is where the fun comes in because I'm an adventurous person. Okay. I love outdoors. I've been skydiving. I've been whitewater rafting. I've been downhill mountain biking. I've been downhill skiing. I love those extreme sports. I haven't snorkeled yet. I haven't gone into the depths of the ocean. I want to. All this stuff. And bringing people in on that journey, it's like, a lot of times what I see is people, they are disenchanted with their own life. They may have this, they may have that, and the joy is gone. The essence of living, the joy of living isn't there. It's like, okay, so how do I add this into what I'm doing? How do I make my life more joyful? And it's tough some days, and then there's days where it's just flowing out of you. And a lot of that is dependent upon the suggestions and the suggestibility. Why am I doing this again? It's a question I always come back to myself with, or I come forward to rather. Am I doing this because it's what I want to do? Am I doing this because I'm connected with other people that are suggesting for me to do this? How does that look for me? And I ask myself this question. And I look at the people that I'm connecting with. Am I in alignment? Are they in alignment with me? Are we seeking the same sorts of things in life? If we're not here, how are we other ways? And never shutting doors without opening the windows. It's like, okay, I can't walk through this door, but maybe I can fly through this window. And then opening that for other people and finding these connective streams, if you will, of current that really flow through all of life and finding the best fits for things, respectively speaking, however that would look for someone within the respective content that they're curating or creating or developing, whatever adjective one would use there, and honoring oneself first. Like, do I feel good about putting this out? Or does this feel appropriate for me? And if it doesn't, why am I putting it out there again? Is it because of, this, that, the other? Is it because of money? Is it because of reputation? Is it because of a contract? Well, I can speak about this because I dissolved a bunch of contracts. I've had customers call me from the past, and I just said, no, I'm not doing that right now. And that was okay. That was a perfectly acceptable answer. Why? Because I built the relationship first. The relationships are really what make life worth living. This is Shot Bun done speaking.
Thank you. That authenticity, that was something I had never heard before. So it, uh, that's a term that I'm going to have to think about, but I can absolutely see using it, understand, okay, this is Dom authentic. This is me I want to be authentic, and this is raw. Can I mix them without over editing, without over polishing? And then where do I fit? I also, there's a couple points that all good points, and appreciate you, but that really stood out to me. This, where do I fit? And you start to think, if I'm out there doing something, where do I fit? Do I enjoy this? Do I like this? And there's this subject of flow, meaning that there's a time of the day where you're doing what you love. I think it's Start with the Why, that Simon Sinek that talks about flow. Maybe, I'm not sure, but there's this point of the day where if you can do what you love, follow your passion, provide for your family, you're not burn out, you're breathing right, in your moment of flow, that's where you can produce the most creative stuff. That's where you can be the best version of yourself. So I thought it all pulled back to that. Okay, can you get to that flow, this point where I fit in, this point of self-love where I am the actual happiest? And so appreciate your points, man. So
Yeah,
Tom, do you
absolutely,
want to?
Dominic. There's
Yeah.
yeah, just one last thing I'd like to inject there is if not, if one is not in their flow, why is one constricting oneself? And is that really the space that one wants to be in? As it were, as it was, as it shall be. Those are all questions that one determines for oneself. That is tough stuff, especially if one has built a brand or a company and there's all sorts of quote unquote tentacles that connect one to everything else. Do we really need to sever ties? This is a question. Do I really need to cut things off? Well, if they were built in authenticity or in raw authenticity, I can go into that nuance more at a later time because I just don't have notes for it in front of me. Um, as it were, as it was, as it is, the relationships, the value that I was adding to people in those days where everything was new, it was fresh, I was bringing in new customers, and we were just developing just pure relationship. Some of these customers, they're my friends, like they're for real friends, and we laugh and we cut up and we have a fun time. It's just a beautiful thing. And there's really nothing monetary to do with it. It's just, how are you doing? What's life been like? How's the industry? Has it changed? Oh, that's no surprise. Okay, well, where are you at now? Okay, you gotta go. No worries. We'll talk again soon. And there's really no strings attached. It's just a very raw, authentic, organic relationship. It's nurturing. The currency, the economia of grace, the flow and the exchange of energy. I find the trouble is when there's like this desire to cap, the essence of something or someone and then put it in a bottle and sell it. Wisdom is free. Wisdom belongs to everyone and everything. And within the respective gift set that one has, obviously the goal, for anyone who has this in them to profit off of, their gift, but not profit so much as make a living because it's like, yo, if this really makes me happy, let's do this and let's do this alone or as much of this as possible. So there's a balance here that I see this nuance of just living in the economia of grace while also freely giving of the same wisdom that we share. It's a nuanced thing. A lot of people try and copyright wisdom, they try and patent, one-liners and, colloquialisms and euphemisms. It's like, well, let's just be frank and clear. This doesn't belong to just one person. We wouldn't share this if we didn't share it together. This is Sattva. I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Safa. I think here's what I'm hearing, right? So I tend to be a pretty pragmatic person, and so I have a hard time. I've been in circles and I have friends who talk about getting in flow state and that kind of stuff, and it doesn't sort of ring for me, right? It doesn't sort of catch for me, and that's a me thing. I said, I'm very pragmatic. I like to sort of deal in things that are a little bit more definable. And actually, here's what I'm hearing from you when you're talking about this exchange, when you're talking about this connected energy, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm hearing and what I think you're actually talking about is something that, and I'm gonna use Dom's favorite word here, something that social psychologists call the rule of reciprocation, right? And so the rule of reciprocation, I've talked about it before in here, but the rule of reciprocation is very straightforward. It's very clear cut. And here's what it says at its most basic form is that you cannot take or receive without giving in return, right? And it's a social construct. It's a rule. It's essentially sort of the cornerstone of civilized society and culture, right? It is something that has been studied globally. That's been looked at in many different cultures around the world, and every single organized society that they've studied, they have found a parallel to what I'm describing right now in English in that culture, right? And so the places where you see this and the places where it's really clear is if you're ever around a parent of a young child, right? And for anybody who's in the room who is a parent who's had young, all of your kids have been young at some point, right? You'll remember that when they were very little, before they could talk, right? Before they could even really walk very well on their own, you would hand them something. And when you handed them something, you would say words to this effect, not necessarily this exactly, but words to this effect. You would hand them something. And when they took it from you, you would say, and now you say thank you, right? And what you're doing is you're teaching that child that when someone gives you something, right, you need to give them gratitude in return, right? And the way we give gratitude is by saying thank you, right? You cannot take or receive without giving in return. It's the reason why when you're walking down the street and you make eye contact with a stranger and they say good morning to you, you say good morning in return, right? It's because you cannot take or receive without giving in return. So really what you're talking about is following this rule of
I would like to answer
reciprocation.
this, Tom. Yeah, and
And
I do hear that rule
okay,
of reciprocation.
hold on. Let me finish. What you're talking about is this rule of reciprocation, and the problem that a lot of people run into is in business, they forget about the rule of reciprocation that they engage in all other aspects of their life, right? And they go straight for sales, right? They go straight to transactions. And if they just follow the rule of reciprocation, that will generate sales and transactions for them and for their business, right? If they deliver value, if they lead with value, the value will be returned to them in their business, right? And that's, I think, what you're getting at. But it's a very, for me, the way I look at it and the way I think about that is very much in terms of like concrete, clear social psychological phenomena called the rule of reciprocation.
Tom, I would like to reflect on that and make this quick. I love that you said that because it isn't just what I'm getting at, it's what I am. It's the essence, the quintessence of what I share. And numerology, especially geoidic numerology, which is the science of correspondences at its purest form, is something that really puts everything pragmatically into clear, defined intonations, ways of living, ways of expressing, and it's called the Enneagram. And there's the 1 through the 9, and it's how one is psychically, and then how their later energy, which comes into the age 35, comes forward through their destiny number. So mine is psychic 2. I'm a psychic 2 and a path of destiny 4. That's the moon, and the north node of the moon, Rahu. So there's a whole itemized list of energy that moves forward. So I love that you said that, Tom, and that's what I wanted to share. This is Sattva. I'm done
Hey,
speaking.
thank you, Satva. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're going to meet we got 3 more people up on stage, and then we're going to close it out. We always try to we always say this is a safe space, open space, meaning if you want to ask a question, you want to drop a tip, if you host a podcast or you're starting a podcast, you wrote a book or you're thinking about writing a book, you got 2 Emmy nominations like Tom, or you're thinking about turning your camera around and making your first video, it's safe here. So you could come ask a question, and we learn from everybody, meaning we learn from the person that's just about to do it or the person that's already done it. We're like, maybe I could do it different, or maybe that person just starting out's braver than maybe I need to do some of what they're doing because they're going for it. So we have Covery, Janice, and April. So Covery, drop a tip, ask a question, and we're going to meet these next 3. So go on.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I guess what got my attention was the publishing and podcasting. I've always kind of had that at the back of my mind that maybe at some point I want to learn how to do it. It's probably pretty simple, but I guess when you haven't done it before, it always seems like, where do you start? That's my question. Thank you.
Love to answer this, and I'm going to tell you about or comment on this because it was maybe not a pure question, but I'm one of my authors, Debbie Griffiths. She just released her book, Torched, Burnt by a Gaslighter. Debbie fought domestic abuse. Debbie, at one point 30 years ago, attempted suicide. She was broken. And she's worked on herself. She's changed her life, raised her kids, became empowered. And now she thought she had a story to share. She hadn't written books. She hadn't done a podcast. She wrote her first book in 5 weeks because she had something to say. And now she's out there doing it. I know the book just launched on Amazon today. The city council made in Santo Rancho Margarita, they made this month Domestic Abuse Awareness Month because of her. So here's a woman that used her voice, and she's still practicing, right? She just did a week ago or 2 weeks ago her first podcast. She sent me a message the other day that somebody asked her to do a podcast with them once a month. So I just have this belief that when you have something to say and your story can help other people, then somebody used this word earlier, that you have a duty to do it. And I'd say figure out how many ways to share that story. Even if the word comes up here, sometimes they say, how many people do you have to make you an influencer? That's the question. They'll come on this room or how many people do you need to have follow you, or do you need to be connected with to be an influencer? Well, the answer is 1. If you impact one life, then you're an influencer. So I would say start today, little by little, whether that's a journal, whether that's recording yourself. However, just start writing and sharing that story. So, Tom, is that a fair answer? Covery, is that a good start?
Oh, yeah, totally. In that case, then I'm definitely influenced. I think for as far as I know, I've influenced my friends or other people. So, that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And everybody here, you might, when you're writing books or practicing your story, you may practice on your friends and family first. Like even in sales or whatever, you might practice that pitch on them, practice that story on them. Sometimes I'll tell my kids a story and they'll be like, nope, nope, nope. And it's one I'm in the middle of writing and I can't even communicate it with my children. Or I'm at a party and I'll start to tell a little bit of a story and I see, well, this person walked away to go get more Cheetos or whatever. Well, I know I need to work on that story because I'm losing them. So don't be afraid to practice those stories. Okay, Janice, Tom,
In
go on.
fairness, Cheetos are delicious, though. In fairness,
Hey, what is with that Twinkie wrapped in Cheeto dust? Has anybody seen that? Is that the weirdest looking thing?
I have not, but I don't think I would want to eat that.
Yeah, it's wrapped in like red. It's a Twinkie wrapped in like red Cheeto dust. Very strange.
Ugh.
Okay, if anybody's had the Twinkie wrapped in Cheeto dust, give me a clap. Nobody, even in David's in Canada.
That
Nobody.
sounds so interesting.
Yeah, nobody's. We'll see. Okay, we got Janice. Ask a question, drop a tip. online course creation strategist. I teach veterans. Well, that's good work. How to create online courses. Veteran's a tough word too. Go on, Janice.
Hey, how you doing? This is Janice. My tip would just simply be just identifying your voice, right? Because we're all very unique. Um, so it's just having a concept of who you are and exactly what it is that you're really trying to, put out in either of those mediums, whether it's Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, or just your normal social media platforms. So having your own unique identity, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be similar or even somewhat, resembling someone else, but because it's you, it's always going to be your uniqueness. And the other thing that I wanted to just kind of say was that, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to, basically be the same on all the platforms in the terms that some platforms are going to be a lot easier for some people, right? Where some people don't like video, whereas others like audio. So it doesn't have to always, you doesn't have to always have that same level of comfort in each one of those zones. But just making certain that it's authentic and it's truly you is going to be the best thing. And that's my tip. Thank you. And I yield my mic.
Janice, that is excellent advice. To be, we say this word. I have behind me one of my author's books. It says, be relentlessly yourself and take on life. So that be authentically yourself, be relentlessly yourself. Absolutely. So thank you for that. We have, okay, let's see. April's on the phone. So, but I did see Julie popped in. So, but I just wanted to read April's bio. If she doesn't stop by, but I thought it was funny. So I wanted to read this. It has one line and it says, host of Bitches and Bourbon podcast and books with bitches and bourbons. I am interested in hearing more about it just based on the title alone. Hey, okay. Julie, you dropped back in here. Was there something you wanted to add, or did you just come to hang out before seeing Brian?
I'm here supporting. So I just got another call. I don't know. I guess everybody's trying to call me this early in the morning. Can you just give me?
No worries. We're good.
Okay. Well, I'm here to support, of course.
Okay, well, you can support, but we're closing the room after Tom, after a beautiful wrap up by Tom. So hold on.
Let's hear what Tom has to say. And in retrospect, I can't believe I sang on this episode today of the Dom and Tom Show.
You did sing. Tom, you were going to give your thoughts about changing the name of the room, and maybe it should be Dom and Tom. Dom and Tom, and a lot of people cooler than them. But hey, because I drop off and am lazy and let Tom do all the work. But I just wanted to thank everybody for all you do, coming and putting up with us and adding all your tips and I would say tricks, but Tom doesn't like me to say tricks. So I appreciate you coming in and adding input and making an impact in this room. And I'm thankful for each of you. So, hey, Tom, give us your wrap up. You did a good job earlier on what was that? Your recap. Let's see what you can do on the wrap up. Go on.
Well, so I just to clarify, I'm good with tricks. I don't like hacks. Right? Because I think hacks are bullshit, basically. Right?
Okay. See, I danced on that word. I wasn't. So it's hacks.
Tricks are okay. Like tricks of the trade, like an interesting way to do something. I think hacks are bullshit because they encourage that sort of idea that there's like a shortcut to the finish line, and we all know there's no real shortcut to the finish line in life, right? Like there's only the long way around, right? There's never a shortcut that works. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. So, I don't really like hacks. I think hacks are bullshit. And generally they don't work as well as doing something the right way. Right. So like maybe it saves you 2 minutes. But it costs you in quality. And is that really worth it? So I don't think the trade-off is usually there personally. So I don't know if we want to leave it there with hacks or bullshit, but the other thing I wanted to say too is like, honestly, in terms of like the name of the room, I just wanted to get this out. Well, since we brought it up at the very beginning, I figured we bring it full circle to the name of the room. I always felt, and I know exactly why, when you and Neil started this space, I know exactly why that was the name. Neil comes from a data-driven marketing background, and he was looking at Clubhouse and saying, well, in order to get this room in front of as many people, we got to use a title that like harnesses a bunch of keywords. And that's how the sort of title came up. But I always describe it to people as a bit of a word salad, right? Because it sort of is. It's just a bunch of words strung together that don't really have a lot of structure and don't really give you a very clear sense of what we do here. So I think it's something we can talk about and we should involve the community in, and something maybe we can talk about next week as well. And maybe we crowdsource this, like, two heads are better than one, 100 heads are better than two, and maybe we kind of put our collective insights together and come up with a way to describe this space that does it justice, because I don't know that the word salad of Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media really does justice to what we do here. So that's my thought on the name of the room, but we definitely something we can revisit. But yeah, I think we'll just end with this. Like, look, I love to beat this drum. Everybody that knows me knows I love to beat this drum. Anybody that's been in this space with us before has heard me harp on this over and over and over again. But I just want to leave everybody with this week. Whatever you do, however you do it, go out into the world and look to deliver value to your audience, to your community. Lead with value always, and that value will be returned to you. And that's about all I got, because that's all my voice is going to give us this week. So thank you so much for everybody listening. Thank you so much for those listening on replays, those that are here with us right now, those that were here with us at the beginning, those that are in the room, on the stage. We love you all. Thank you so much. And we can't wait to see you guys next week. We will talk to you then. Go ahead, Dom. We're going to close it out in 3, 2, 1. We're out. Goodbye.